Hello, my name is Chris Welch. I'm a technical assistant specialist for the Cherokee Nation CCO program. Today with our webinar, we want to talk to you guys about image editing. And as you guys can see on the screen, again, we will use the gcflearnfree.org website. This is available to anybody as long as you have internet. These are free sessions that you can go to if you ever need to refer back and look at those. Today what we want to cover with you is image editing 101. One of the biggest things that we do with our nonprofits or any other group is social media, and getting people to visualize what we're doing is one of the biggest things we can do these days. And it's one thing, our phones can do great things with the picture taking capabilities on those. We can usually upload things right away, but if you don't really understand how that works, or if you have a nice digital camera that you can edit, things can get a little tricky for us, and there's way more we can be doing to create the ultimate photograph so we can ultimately tell our story. So that's what we want to cover today. First, like I said, we're going to start with image editing 101, and then after this we'll watch some videos on some of the other programs like Photoshop that can really up our game whenever we look to not only create a great image, to create flyers, posters, banners, all those sort of things that we have to pay money to others to help us do. So let's get started. Let's get started with the image editing. As you can see, just a quick introduction, as you can see on my screen here, is that if you've ever needed to edit an image on your computer, when I first started, I had no idea how to do this. As you can see from the picture here, this is normal. This is a normal image that we could take from our phone or from our camera. You know, there's some darkness in the back, and it's really hard to focus on the image in front of us. And as you look at the picture on your right, you see this is an edited image. They've lightened up the background. There's more color focus on the dragonfly here, and you can even see the small blotches now on the limb that the dragonfly has landed on. So this is very good stuff. It really enhances any flyers. It makes it just everything look professional whenever you do that. So whether you need to work with images at home or at your office, this basically will cover the basics that'll help you get started. Like I said before, some of the other programs that are out there, there's Photoshop, there's Microsoft Word, how you can format pictures there, and then iPhone also has some great photo editing capabilities on it too. But today we're going to focus on just the basics here, and then I will go over Photoshop since it's one of the most widely used programs out there for you guys these days. Okay, let's understand the basics real fast. We see digital image files every day in a wide range of places. Whenever you see a picture on a computer or smartphone, you're looking at a digital image file. That's in the tech world, that's what they're called. When you take a picture with a digital camera, you're saving it as an image file. It's the same thing as saving one on your phone. Just like all the stuff you see offline, those are newspapers, magazines, they probably started as a digital image too before they were printed. Have you ever thought about how these image files work? Here's just a few basic things to know about your digital imaging files. First, pixels. Every digital photo is made up of pixels, often abbreviated as PX whenever you see it come up under a file on your computer. You can think of a pixel as a tiny square that uses a specific color, right? As you can see, these little pixels that are coming up. They kind of look a lot like the old Pac-Man video games when Ataris were cool whenever all of us were much younger. You're usually looking at thousands and thousands of pixels to make up one picture. But because each pixel is so small, you normally won't notice each of them unless you zoom in. You see how it gets cloudy here? That's how you know this actually comes out of this picture at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge up here. Whenever you zoom in, it's going to look cloudy and fuzzy, okay? Another thing to know is dimensions. When you refer to the height and width of an image, you're talking about its dimensions. For example, if an image is 500 pixels wide and 200 pixels high, you could say its dimensions are 500 by 200 px. The width is usually listed first. Let's look at a few other examples as you see the image below of the squirrel. It's 300px or 300 pixels tall and 450 pixels wide. This is a good landscape format. I know whenever you go to print or look at pictures, whenever you are working on your computer, that'll ask you landscape or portrait. Whenever your width is wider than your height, that's going to be a landscape kind of picture. Below, this is a portrait. Now it's 450 high and 300 wide. That's a portrait type picture, okay? Keep that in mind. Another reminder, remember PX stands for pixels. Resolution. This is one of the biggest things when you're posting to social media that you're looking for, or if you're asking for something from somebody that really needs to be clear. The higher the resolution, the sharper and clearer the image is going to be, okay? When you think of resolution is the amount of detail contained in that image. The higher the resolution, the more quality the image will have. Resolution is especially important if you're thinking of putting or resizing an image. That's because you generally make an image smaller without noticing much of a difference in the quality, right? However, making a larger image in the original size will usually result in noticeable loss in quality. If you take a smaller resolution picture and you try to make it larger, as you can see down here in the bottom, it gets blurry, it gets fuzzy. So the higher the resolution, the better if you know that you're going to try to enlarge something. Now, if you use a high resolution here and you need to make it smaller, you're going to have relatively the same resolution, but just in a smaller picture. So remember, high resolution is best. Here's some file formats. There are many different file formats images can use. It's important to understand the basics of image file formats, along with the most common ones you'll see when working with images, okay? File size and image compression. Let's talk about that for a minute. We talked about file size and reducing pictures and high resolution earlier, but keep in mind that digital image files can be large and take up a lot of hard drive space, okay? Because of this, many file formats use compression in order to reduce the file size. There are two main types of file compression here. There's the lossy. This compression type removes some information from the image. It lowers the overall quality in order to reduce the file size, okay? Lossless. This compression type does not remove any information from the image, but it usually cannot reduce the file size as much as a lossy compression, okay? Lossy is going to give you a bigger reduction. The lossless is going to not remove any of that information, and it's just not going to be nearly as clear, okay? Images that use lossy compression can be saved at different quality levels. The lower the quality, the smaller the file size, okay? That's because lowering the quality also removes more information from the image. In the example below, you can see the save image, same as the different lower qualities. You have low quality, which is your 6 kilobytes, medium, and then high. You can clearly see the difference, the resolution and the clarity. It's just much clearer the higher the level once compressed, okay? Here's a little something that you can try. If you pull up your website and want to go back and play with this later, you can kind of see, as right now, there's a lower quality and a higher quality. We're right in the middle at 110 kilobytes. You drag this over. This is the higher the resolution. See how everything clears up? We can move it completely over here. You see how the file gets a little bit less clear. We become fuzzy. It's hard to see. But as we move it over, you can see the higher quality. You can almost see the sugar in that frosting whenever you do this. So we started again at 110. That's a good mid-level. So play around with this. If you can, go to this website, which is www.gcflearnfree.org, and go to Image Editing 101. And you can take the time and kind of go through some of this stuff here. Next, let's just talk about some recommended file formats. I know for me, for a long time, whenever I started doing this kind of work, I didn't understand what a JPEG was or a PNG or what they're used for, so I'm going to cover that right now. A JPEG, or a JPEG, pronounced JPEG, this file type is commonly used for photographs, and most digital cameras save photos in this format by default, okay, so it's not something you have to go in and do. JPEG uses lossy compression, which means it provides a reasonably high level of quality without a very large file size. PNG, pronounced ping or PNG. This file type is commonly used for graphics and illustration. So this would be something you wanted to use on flyers, if you're creating a banner or something like that, okay? It also can be used for photographs. PNG uses lossless compression, meaning photographs have, with this format, will usually be of a higher quality than a JPEG image. But the file size will be much larger, okay? It's going to take up more and more room on your drive, okay? Always keep that in mind whenever saving something in a PNG. But whenever you need to print something that's going to be big or you really need it clear, I really suggest trying to use a PNG or a PNG file, okay? Here's some other common file formats. There's many of these. There's a GIF or GIF. Some people like to say a GIF. The GIF file type was originally designed for graphics, okay? But it's now most commonly used for simple animated images for the web. I think we've all seen that. Facebook, Instagram, all of our social media now have all these funny GIFs that we can choose from. At the bottom, instead of just saying what we're saying, we can actually send people pictures of these funny things. They usually are the same rotating video of the same action for only 1 or 2 seconds, and it just repeats itself. These are fun to play around with if you choose to make one of these. There are also some file formats that do not use compression, such as RAW or BMP. For example, cameras use a RAW format to save very high quality images. Because these formats are uncompressed, the files tend to be much larger than a JPEG or a PNG file. Again, if you're making a big printout, maybe something you want to look into is doing a RAW or BMP file. Keeping your originals. This is just a thought here. Whenever you edit an image, there's a chance some of the original information from the image can be lost, okay? If you edit the same file over and over again, the edited image can begin to look much worse than the original. This is called image degradation. It's especially problematic for files that use lossy compression such as JPEG images, okay? The good news is there's an easy way to avoid this problem. If you're planning on making even basic changes to the image, such as cropping or resizing, you should also keep an original, an unedited version of the file. Just kind of like how we keep backup files, or you should keep a backup of anything. Keep the original file. That way, if you do make a mistake, you still have the original file and you can go back and start over, okay? These are just some of the very basic things that we wanted to start off with. So now let's move on to image editing softwares. There's so much software out there for us to do and for us to use. Here's some great things. We're going to talk about free and paid options, okay? Basic imaging software, if you just need to make simple adjustments to an image, such as cropping, resizing, and rotating, there are many free applications available to you. This includes built-in software on your device, third-party software. I know Instagram, for instance, which is very popular these days. It's all about posting an image and putting a caption with this for your social media. Kind of keeps everybody in the loop of what's going on in your life. They have different types. Okay, you select your picture on your phone, and then they have all these different things that you can click on to give it a different look. So there are some free things out there. It can be built into your social media devices. There's different programs for your PC or your Mac that are very handy that can be free. And then of course, if you purchase one, you're going to have even better options available to you, okay? Basically, when you do a free version, it's just the basics. So let's talk about built-in software real quick. Windows. Almost every Windows computer includes Paint. You may already know that Paint is a simple drawing application, but it can be used for basic image adjustments. Another option is Windows Photo Gallery. Okay, you have that available. It's a free application from Microsoft and includes more enhanced editing tools, more than Paint. I use Paint a lot if I'm trying to do a screen capture off of my PC, and then if I really need to change things up, I will try to use the Windows Photo Gallery. Obviously, because they're both free. They're both free products for us. Now, if you have a Mac, the program on there will be called Preview. This program is primarily used for viewing images and PDF files. It also includes several basic editing tools. Newer Macs usually come pre-installed with iPhoto, which you can also use to organize and edit your photos. iOS, photos taken off an iPhone or iPad will appear in the Photos app. From there, like I say, most of these, you can see the digital image here. There's different things. This here automatically enhances. It brightens the background. It brightens your colors. It looks like a little wand here. Okay. This one here, you can change the whole format of this by clicking on the three round circles here, and you can. They have different image names, and you can change those. As you guys can see here, if you're taking facial pictures and using those, this here will get the red out of the eyes. You know, a lot of the times when we take photographs, the eyes can go red. So you basically click on this icon, click on the eyes, and it'll do its best to get rid of the red color in the eyes. And then if you need to crop anything, this little image here on your far right, you can click on that and you can drag and shape, cut out some of the background if you need to focus in more on the two individuals. It's a really good program that you can use. Okay, and a lot of us have iPhones or Android, so same thing for Android. As you guys can see, a lot of these are the same. As you can see, the three circles here, there's none. See, they all have crazy names like Punch, Vintage, Black and White, Bleach It Out, Instant Color. They're all different enhancers. You just kind of pick and choose what you like. And again, you can zoom in and out right here on the Android with this one here. The crop button looks exactly the same. Okay, and this here will kind of put this in a portrait and kind of square things up for you if that's what you're looking to do. Third-party software. There are many third-party image editing applications you can use on your computer or mobile device. Some are free and then others are paid. One example is Pixlr, which is a free editor that runs in your web browser. For quick edits for Pixlr, you have a basic version called Pixlr Express, okay, which is also available as a mobile app. So if you have an iPhone or an Android, you can download that and you can edit your images right there on your phone. We'll be using Pixlr Express throughout this tutorial to demonstrate the various editing techniques, okay? If you have a smartphone or tablet, there are many free apps that you can use here as well, such as Instagram, Avery, and Photoshop Express. We've already kind of talked about those and how you can use those. Editing images with Microsoft, okay? While you're in Microsoft Office Suite, there's Word, there's PowerPoint, Publisher, which include image editing tools along with the software. Okay, so if you've already purchased your Microsoft Office Suite, you've already got these built in. It won't be as high-tech as the Photoshop. You won't get as clear as the image, but it does give you the basic tools, especially when you're just starting out. Okay, the tools will be especially helpful if you want to make simple adjustments to an image in a document or a presentation for like a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, other things, if you want to go back and look, if you're on the website, you can look at Word for how to format pictures, PowerPoint, and Publisher. These three links here below will take you to those and kind of help you out. So again, refer back to the website here. Advanced image editing software. If you need additional editing tools, you may want to use an advanced image editing application. You can learn more about these, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, is Adobe Photoshop. Okay, Photoshop is something that you do have to pay for. It can be expensive at times. It's available for Windows and Mac devices. Photoshop is an extremely powerful application that's used by many professional photographers and designers. A lot of the times your professional graphic designers and photographers use Photoshop. There's just so much more that they can do with the product. It's also very expensive. I believe it's $300 to $500 a year for the subscription for Photoshop. It's very expensive, but there's so much you can do. And as you can see, there's a lot to learn about Photoshop. Every one of these icons is a different tool to use. So keep that in mind. Then there's Photoshop Elements. Photoshop Lite. It gives you access to some of the most popular features from the full version of Photoshop, but it usually costs less than $100, okay? While some advanced Photoshop users may be frustrated by its limitations, For a beginner or a basic that wants to learn how to use Photoshop, Photoshop Element is a good option for you. Pixelmator. While this is only available for Mac, Pixelmator includes many of the advanced features found in Photoshop and usually costs less than $50, so it's a little bit cheaper. It's basically a Photoshop for a Mac for a beginner. Paint. Paint is one of those that I really enjoy using. There's a lot you can do with Paint. Originally designed as an open source alternative to Microsoft Paint, Paint.net includes several advanced editing tools. It's only available on Windows, so Mac users, I'm sorry, you guys are left out on this one, but it's another option for you. GIMP, designed as an open source alternative to Photoshop. It's free to use on both Windows and Mac. It's a powerful application. You may find the interface confusing and difficult to use if you're not familiar with the other image editing software. So try to learn your basics first before you try to use the GIMP. And what we talked about here with ours was the Pixlr. Like Pixlr Express, the full Pixlr editor is a free application that runs in your web browser. However, it also includes many advanced features in many ways is similar to Photoshop. Photo management software. Okay, many professional photographers use photo management applications such as Adobe Lightroom, also Windows Photo Gallery or iPhoto, so they can keep a collection of those. With organizational tools like tagging of folders, these applications make it easy to view, manage your photos, especially if you're taking a lot. It includes editing tools, which is under a single application for all your image editing needs. Simple to find, a lot simpler than Photoshop to use, but it is all there for you. Now let's move on to making basic adjustments. Just some basic image adjustments. Cropping, we already talked about that. If you want to remove parts from an image, you can crop it. You can think of cropping as using a pair of scissors to cut out the parts you no longer want. Okay, sometimes you'll get too much background in the background and we just crop those out of there. To resize it and make it useful for us. Again, resizing, if you want to make an image smaller or larger, you can resize it. However, keep in mind that making an image larger than its original size generally does not look good. Rotating, if you want to change the orientation of an image, you can rotate it to the left or right. Okay. Throughout this lesson, we're going to show you to make these adjustments with Pixlr Express, a free web-based image editor. That way, we're not forcing you to go out and purchase a $500 Photoshop program. As you can see here, we're going to show you the easiest and the cheapest route that you can get the same great results out of. Okay, if you have different image editing program, you can still follow along with this, but roughly the same way. We're going to use this as a tutorial today. Okay, here's some tips. Here's just some image editing tips for you. Keep your originals, okay? If you mess up in any way, try to keep those originals in a separate file. Just in case you make some very large mistakes, you'll still have the original file and you can start over, okay? Check the zoom level. When you're editing an image on your computer, you'll usually be viewing it less than 100% of its full size. This is because modern digital cameras take large, high-resolution images. These images are so large, in fact, that most computer screens can't display all the pixels in the image at once. Have you ever noticed when you save a picture and that you upload a picture from your camera and it's bigger than the screen on your computer? That is why. Higher resolution equals more detail, which we talked about this earlier. Whenever you crop or resize an image, you're also removing pixels from the image. This means you'll have fewer pixels to work with, which will give you less flexibility. For example, if you print a photo, having extra pixels will help to move the photo look as sharp as possible, okay? Or if you're creating a desktop background, you'll want to ensure that the final size is at least as large as your screen resolution. Keep in mind what we talked about on the landscape, portrait, and the pixel sizes and how we can do that. Quick experiment. There's no perfect formula for editing images, okay? Everyone seems to have a different program that they like to use and a different way that they like to do things. Even for graphic designers, they learn techniques and find out what works for them to find out how they're most comfortable, okay? So there's no end-all be-all with this. Try different adjustments, find out what works for your image, find different programs, use the ones that you're used to using and you feel like you get the best results with. Cropping images. There will often be times when an image includes a lot of extra space or content you'd like to remove. You can solve this problem by cropping the image. In the example below, we cropped the image to show less of the background and emphasize the butterfly. As you can see, there was a lot of background space in such a small butterfly. So what they did here is they selected the area that they wanted to focus on, and as you can see, it brought the focus on the butterfly and got rid of a lot of the unnecessary rock and everything in the background here. As you guys can see, this is it. This is what the cropped image looks like on the right. Again, same thing here. What a large picture, right? There's so much going on here. And they wanted to focus on these three lanterns here. So they cropped just those lanterns in, and now look at this beautiful picture that we have over on the right. It's much smaller. It's going to take up way less space. And now you know what the true focus is. It's right here on these lanterns. To crop an image. We're going to use the Pixlr Express. You can click on the adjustment button. Your screen will look like this. And here's the icon crop. You see it has all the different things here. Overlay, color, autofix, what automatically just enhances the picture. But here we want to crop. So you press the crop button. Again, we talked about what the crop button icons always look like. Then you click and drag the cropping handles until only part of the image you want to keep visible. See here, you can bring it in here. You bring it in this way. When you go in this way, it adjusts when you go in a diagonal, it adjusts the entire picture. And if you come in from your left or your right, it's going to bring that in, and then you need to adjust your top and bottom as well so you get a better height and width of your picture, okay? Then after you've done what you want to do, you click apply. The image will be cropped. Voila, there you have a nice, beautiful black and blue butterfly. If desired, you can click the save button to save this new version of the image, okay? Just a little bit of stats to go along with this. An example above, you can locate the zoom top right corner, which I covered, which is your small little blue squares that were up here. That's what's considered your zoom, okay? You can go up to 18% of its original size. In step 4, we zoomed to 38%. That's because our image has a high resolution, which allows us to zoom up to 100%. Okay, if you don't have a high resolution, you won't be able to do that. Cropping will remove pixels from an image, so you'll always need to make sure the cropped version is still large enough for your needs. If you want to print the image or display it in a large size, you'll generally need more resolution. Just a reminder. Resizing images. Digital images can be displayed at different sizes. You'll probably need to resize your images most of the time. However, resizing is an easy way to reduce the file size of an image, which can be helpful if you want to send the image as an email attachment or upload it to the web. You can see an example of resizing here. This is a much bigger picture. We brought it down. And again, if you take a smaller resolution and try to enlarge it, you're going to get fuzzy, it's going to become blurry. These simple steps here, again, Pixlr, we're going to use Pixlr Express to adjust this. So again, highlighted in blue, resize. We cropped here, here's your resize button. Enter the desired dimensions for the new image. When you enter the new image width, the height will be adjusted automatically to maintain the original aspect ratio of the image. As you can see, they changed the width to 300, the height to 200. Remember, these are your pixels. Click apply, and then it automatically changes the size of your picture for you. If desired, click the Save button to the new version of the image. Okay, I always like to keep my original and then do a Save As for that picture and give it a different name, such as you could put geese on a pond resized as your picture name, and then that will kind of help you keep those separated. That way, if you go back and this isn't working for an application that you have, but you still want to use that picture, you still have your original. Okay, let's talk about aspect ratio when resizing. When you resize an image, it's important to make sure the new version uses the same proportions, aspect ratio as the original. For example, take a look at this image, right? If you want to resize this image while maintaining the same aspect ratio, you will need to change both the height and width by equal proportions. Most image editing programs can do this automatically when you resize the image. However, if you just try to guess what proportions to use, if you're using sizing handles, it's easy for an image to become distorted, and that's not what we want. A distorted image may look too wide or too narrow, and it's going to really show the mistake that you made. Obviously, this building is not that wide. It's more of a up and down building, but because we widened the frame here, the building became, as you can even see, the statue's head starts to kind of span out. It just does not look good whenever you go to do those sort of things. While not always be obvious, these examples illustrate why it's so important to preserve the original aspect ratio when resizing an image. There are a few easy ways to make sure a resized image will use the same aspect, and we're going to talk about that here. Most applications will give you the option to preserve the aspect ratio when resizing. Pixlr for option, it's called keep proportions, but in other applications it may be called constrain proportions or maintain aspect ratio. Some programs like Photoshop, it's represented by a lock icon. Make sure this option is turned on before resizing an image, and you should not only adjust the height, the other dimension will be adjusted automatically. So if you adjust the height, it'll adjust your width too, to make it proportional like it should be. If you're using signing handles to resize an image, be sure to use corner sizing handle rather than a side handle. Some applications also require you to press and hold a key on the keyboard, such as Shift or Alt, to lock the aspect ratio. If you need to fit an image to a new aspect ratio, for example, if you need a 4-inch by 6-inch version of a square image, it's best to crop the image to the new aspect ratio. Simply resizing the image to match the new aspect ratio will result in image distortion. And this is one that our next thing is rotating images. As you can see, it says rotate. And I think we've all seen this option, especially whenever we're dealing with different built-in photo programs on our PCs. But sometimes the image can be rotated the wrong way. This can happen if the camera was turned on its side when taking the original image. This happens a lot when using your cell phone. Just keep in mind, you guys can always adjust this. Just hit this until it goes back the right way. As you can see, this was in landscape when it was taken, but you want a portrait now. Hit the rotate until it'll go around, all the way around, usually 1/4 turns each time, but once you get it to where you want it, then that's how you rotate. Okay, as you can see, the button here again is rotate. We've just kind of already talked about how to do this, so if you want to go back and look at this, you can. Again, save this image, keep your proportions right, and I think you'll be in the clear. Quick count challenge before we move on to our next thing here, though. If you want to practice making the adjustments we covered in this lesson, you can download some example images. Okay, play around with this until you get the hang of it. Find that program that works for you, something that you're comfortable with, and go with it. Okay, you can follow these directions below. Again, gcflearnfree.org, and this is our Image Editing 101. Now let's move on to fixing common problems. Okay. Images that come straight from a digital camera aren't always perfect. As you start to gain more experience with image editing, you may notice some recurring problems, okay? Brightness and contrast is one. If an image is too dark, too bright, or too dark, you can adjust the brightness and the contrast, okay? Color. If the colors are in image are muted or dull, you can use a variety of color correction tools such as saturation. You see here as we brightened up that green. If an image is less clear than you'd like to be, you can sharpen it. Again, what a dull picture here on your left, right? The greens aren't jumping out at you. It's hard to tell what this little sapling is coming out of. Is that wood? Is that grass? What's going on here? But by using the brightness, how to bring the colors back out, it can really, that sapling on the right hand side really sticks out, as where the one on the left is just kind of blends into the rest of the picture. Okay, a little bit about this lesson, and here's some tips to help us with these type of things. Is again, keep your originals. We said that over and over. We're going to continue to say that. Keep your originals in case you make a mistake, or if you need to reuse this image for something else, for a different application, that you'll have that. Do not do a save and automatically put all these into that image. You've lost your original image from that. Combine different adjustments. You may find that images are often in need of more than just one correction. For example, some images might be improved by both brightness and color adjustments, while others can benefit from cropping and sharpening. It's all about finding what works and to bring out the best in the image. Again, you will need to experiment and play with this, okay? Again, no perfect formula for editing images. Find the program you like, find what you're comfortable with, and continue to find yourself and what program works for you. Brightness and contrast. Sometimes the image may look too bright or too dark. Okay, we talked about that. As you can see, here's how they adjusted the brightness. Very dull picture here on the left. As you can see, just by enhancing the brightness, they brought more of this picture out. Where her dress looked almost, her outfit looked almost black, now we can see it's more of a blue, and she really stands out in front of this lighter stone, okay? And it took away the shadow off of this gentleman's face a little bit. Now we can see his nose and his eyes. So just by changing your brightness can really be a difference, okay? Increasing the brightness for a very dark image can lead to a lot of image noise or graininess. That's because you're brightening any noise that the image may already have. In the example below, you notice that the green background in the image on the right looks rough and grainy, correct? We'll talk more about reducing that here in just a minute, okay? As they increase the brightness, very dark picture, the background almost looks very pixely, correct? But it is way brighter, and we couldn't see these colors before. Contrast. When you increase the contrast, you're making the difference between the light and the dark areas of the image more noticeable. In other words, you're making the dark parts darker and the light parts lighter. You noticed in the image below, again, the one on the left is very dull, and we've really increased that contrast on the right and brought out the sunlight coming through the trees and in the spots. You really are able to focus on this picture, whereas this one is just not as appealing. Okay, we're going to drag the slider. If we had this picture here and we wanted less contrast, let's show you what that does. See how much that darkens everything up? Now let's increase the contrast all the way to the other side. Keep this image in your mind. Wow, right? Look at that sunlight coming through. It's very attention grabbing. But we were good right here in the middle. You have just the right amount of sunlight coming in. You're able to see the water, and it feels like you can see forever down this creek or this brook here. So much you can do with these pictures, guys. So it can really make a difference for you. Again, we'll just slowly scroll through this. If you want to use the Pixlr Express, get it, try it out, see how it works for you. It is a free application, so it usually works pretty well, and as you can see, it'll show you all the contrasts and what to click. Again, click on the contrast button, kind of pick your brightness and your contrast, how you want to adjust those, and then you'll get your end result here. Saturation. Okay, sometimes colors in an image may appear to be dull or muted. You can compensate for this by increasing the saturation, which can make the colors look richer or more vivid. You can see an example of this in the images below. Okay, there's your original image. They slightly bumped it up, and then even more saturation. You're able to really see the vivid colors of those purple flowers, those pink and purple and yellow flowers. Again, if you want to do a black and white or grayscale, here's your original image, same that we had here. They desaturated some more, took some of the color out, and if you want to go completely black and white image, just like the old days, when it sounded like a gun was going off when your picture was taken, you can go back to that style and completely pull the colors out completely. Again, here's another tool. We can slide this. Here's less saturation, almost to the black and white. As you guys can see, as I go, the color starts returning. And see how vivid we are on the color once we go all the way over in the saturation. This was our original, just kind of a light pink, almost purple, light lavender kind of daisies here. But as you guys can see, the more saturation we add, they're completely bright purple at this point. They're completely different. Even the yellow shines and jumps out at you if that's the kind of look that you're going for. Color. This is the icon you'll pick on your Pixlr if you want to adjust your saturation. You can adjust everything from the hue, your saturation, lightness, darkness, and then again, hit apply, and here's your end result. Some of the brightest colors that I have seen yet. Okay. Other color corrections, hue. This tool changes all the colors in the image at the same time. This will often result in a natural color combination. So we only recommend using this option for artistic effect if you're doing graphic design and really trying to change things up, okay? Vibrance. This tool lets you boost the saturation for the parts of the image that are less colorful without oversaturating the parts that are already colorful. This helps prevent the colors from looking unnatural, kind of like our last image. It's almost like those flowers went neon. The temperature. This tool adjusts how warm and cool colors in the image appear, okay? In general, a warmer temperature will look more red or orange, while a cooler temperature will look more of a blue or a green. Filters. Many apps such as Instagram have predefined combinations of color adjustments that can quickly apply to create interesting effects. For example, they can make your photos look like they were taken with a vintage camera. I know that's a popular thing to do these days. So keep that in mind. There are tools out there. Some are already on the smartphone that you carry around in your pocket. Some are free, and then if you really feel like you want to dive into the professional programming, they will cost you, but once you learn how to use them, they will completely change the game for you. Okay, sharpening. Sometimes the image may not be as clear as you'd like to be. Sharpening can help make your images look crisp and clear by enhancing the edges. Objects in this image, however, adding too much sharpness can actually make an image look worse or lead to the loss of image detail. Take a look at the examples below. Here's our original, right? Not pretty dull, not quite where we would like it to be. We sharpened it some here. Now you can really see the detail in the feathers and in the face. Now they over sharpen this. Now it almost looks like this isn't even real. See how digitally your background got? Even though you can see the bird, it almost looks like he's not even a part of the picture. It almost looks like he's been just pasted on there. And that comes from an original photograph. So be careful with your sharpening. It can take you from being gorgeous to looking unrealistic, okay? And again, original, and if we really sharpen it all the way, see what it does? Unnatural looking bird. Here in the middle somewhere is about the perfect picture. You can see all the detail, the color in the feathers. It just makes for a nicer image. Be careful with your sharpening. On Pixlr Express, again, to sharpen, you click on the sharpening icon, which is highlighted here. You can adjust the amount, the radius, and then you can apply that to your image. Okay. I'm not going to cover a whole lot of the image noise. I think that's even a little too advanced for us. So, again, just play with this. This is the only way to learn how to do this photo image editing, guys, is to find the program and play with it. I know it's going to take a little bit of time and we're all busy people, but in order to get good at this and to really use these applications, you need to do it. You need to be able to play with this, okay? Let's talk about sharing photos online. This is very easy. For most of you, we can send these as an attachment through an email. Facebook, they have buttons now. You click photo or video and select it from your phone or from images that are already saved on your computer. It is that easy now. You can create albums. If you're don't mind people seeing what's going on in your life and nothing is out of bounds there, then they also make a good way to back up photographs and reminders of things that happened. So Facebook is really good about that. Another is Instagram. I just recently discovered that I like Instagram way more than I thought I did. It's got built-in sharpening and coloring agents on your photographs. It's a lot of fun to play around with. So same thing as Facebook. Select your picture and you can play around with it. Put you in a nice caption. It's a good way to market and do things these days. Twitter, same way. Same way with Twitter. They don't have all the imaging enhancing things that go along with it, so you need to do your image editing before, but the same as Facebook and Instagram, you can load it straight up from your phone or your computer. Flickr, this is one that I don't use a whole lot, but if you share a lot of image, Flickr is one of the best photo hosting sites on the web. Okay, because it's basically going to give you 1,000 gigabytes, 1 terabyte of free storage space. Okay, Flickr allows you to store thousands of photos online. You also have the option to share some of your photos publicly while making others private. Okay, so there's a little bit of a privacy thing. Great backup if you're scared of the cloud and don't like the cloud and you're okay with social media. Flickr is a great way to store your photos. Okay. Simple image editing sites like TinyPic or Imgur. You guys can use these. It helps you edit them and then automatically saves it to the site. Okay. Online photo sharing tips. Before you share a photo online, here's a few final changes you want to make sure your photos look as good as possible. Okay, these changes will also help optimize your photos for web viewing. Save it as a JPEG. If you're going to do online things, save it as a JPEG. Resize when needed. Many photo sharing services, Facebook, they'll resize your images automatically when you upload them. If you're using a service like this, you probably won't need to worry about resizing your images manually. But if you're not, then you will need to size your images. By comparison, take a look at the resized versions of the save image below. 400 pixels by 267 pixels, which is 22 kilobytes. This is a small version of an image. Here's a larger. This is 60 kilobytes of 800 pixels by 533 pixels. As you can see, much clearer, much larger. Okay. With the 800 pixel version, a slightly larger file, or 60 kilobytes, than the 400, which was 22. Both of these are much, much smaller than the original version of 4,500 kilobytes. Keep that in mind. It's actually about 99% smaller than the original, which will make it easier for the people to download and view the image on the web. But remember something. You should always keep the original unedited version of the file. I told you I was going to repeat it again. Keep your originals, okay? You can review this, make basic adjustments, again, play with this, and learn how to do it. And we have one more section that we're going to talk about, and that's going to be printing our photos. A lot of folks, this is fairly simple once you've edited it, but we do want to cover this for you guys, okay? Sometimes you want to print physical copies of your digital photos. We're going to talk about some of the printing services that are out there and how to really make a great image for you. There are several things you'll need to decide whenever you print your photos. For example, do you want them printed on glossy or matte? What size should the prints be? For example, you might choose a small, inexpensive size, such as a 4x6. This size usually is the least expensive option, so it's a good choice if you're printing a lot of photos, but probably not real good if you're wanting to do a larger print like an 8x11, okay? You can print them out in an 8x10 like I just mentioned. These are more expensive, but this is usually what people want to put in their offices, especially pictures of family members and things like that. Now, there are options that we have. Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, Target. They have printing things there for us. We save our digital images on a stick or a flash drive. You can plug it in, choose what you want it to print it out, and it will cost you. As you can see, like this one here for Walgreens, it's 10 cents for a 4x6 print, 10 cents per image. So it can get expensive, but if you have all the tools at home, you guys can do that as well. There's online things like Shutterfly and all that. You basically print what you want, how many you want of it. They take care of the rest and really do things nice. They can even make you calendars, gifts, home decor items, make photo books for you. It will cost you guys, as you guys can see, like an 8x10 print is $4. A 4x6 is 15 cents, which if you'll notice is 5 cents more than going to Walgreens. So be careful there. Something else that you can do is print at home, okay? You can use your own printer to print photos. While printing at home may be convenient, it's several disadvantages. For example, printing photos uses a lot of ink, which we all know they're not giving that away. It's very expensive. And you also need to buy photo paper for better results, okay? And sometimes these printers, they tend to smear. If it's not the professional printers like our folks at Walgreens and or Shutterfly and those places will have, you may get a little bit of ink smearage and it'll totally ruin your picture, okay? Make sure that it is a photo printer. Photo printers do a much better job, especially the laser. So take a look at those. Be careful if you want to do that, that you're using the proper equipment. Just every printer cannot produce you a nice picture, okay? Few tips. Use JPEG images whenever you're going to print from home, okay? Use high resolution pictures and images. We talked about that earlier. The higher the resolution, the better quality you're going to have. Adjust your cropping if necessary. If you're going to have a 4x6, 5x7, you see this 4x6, you're completely cutting her head off. So be careful what you're doing. In this picture, maybe you don't want the legs in the picture. Here, they crop that in a 4x6. And this is on Shutterfly. As you can see, it really helps you design your print here. Here's some more advanced printing tips, okay? We're going to print you a test copy. Just don't print it out. Just don't buy one sheet of paper or whatever. Play with it again, test it, make sure this is exactly the way you want it to be. Sharpen. If you want your prints to look extremely crisp and clear, you can apply more sharpening than you normally would. The images look over sharpened on your computer, don't worry, they'll lose a little bit of sharpness in the printing process, which means the printed versions will look correct. You can review our lesson of this on the Fixing the Common Problems. So again, go back to this website, www.gcflearnfree.org. We really suggest you look at some of these other things, okay? I'm going to pause for a minute and let you guys take a short break, and when we come back, we'll review with some videos, just some brief overviews of Photoshop. I don't want to go too deep into that because it will confuse you, especially if you're not real familiar with the imaging process, but I do want you to be aware of this professional photo editing program that is out there for your use, okay? See you in just a minute. Alright, welcome back everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed this little short break. You heard me talk about Photoshop quite a bit in the last one. It is more of a professional use. Again, we're still using the same website, www.gcflearnfree.org, and this is their Photoshop basics. As somebody who's just dabbled with Photoshop, I don't consider myself an expert, but they've got some great tutorial videos on here. So I do want to show you guys this. This first one is a brief introduction into our image editing stuff, so I want you guys to watch this video and kind of give you a little bit of a better idea of how you can do things here on Photoshop.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Photoshop is a great tool for touching up photos and creating your own graphics, but if you've never used the program before, it can be a bit intimidating at first. Not to worry. In this video, I'm going to go over the basics, including what some of these tools and features are for. I'll also give you tips for setting up your workspace. Let's start by opening an existing image file. Just go to File in the upper left corner, choose Open, then find and select the image you want. In this case, I'm going to use a JPEG that I already have saved to my computer. This is how most Photoshop projects begin. Generally, you're editing something you already have, not starting from scratch. But if you want, you can go to the File menu and choose New to create a blank file instead. As you can see, the image has opened in the center. This is called the document window. It tells you the file name right here, along with the current zoom level. In our example, you'll notice that we're currently viewing the image at about 25% because the original photo is so large. To zoom in, you can press Ctrl+ on your keyboard or Command+ if you're using a Mac. To zoom out, press Ctrl- or Command-. To the left is the Tools panel, which is one of the most important features in Photoshop. This is where you'll select whatever tool you want to use to edit your image. For example, this one lets you add text. And if you click and hold the command, you can access more tools that are similar but slightly different. If a lot of these tools seem unfamiliar right now, that's okay. You'll learn more about them as you get more experience with Photoshop. Let's take a look at the Control panel next. That's the area above your file where you can change the settings for your current tool. The options are specific to whatever tool you have selected, so they'll always be different. Right now we're using the Text tool, so we can change things like the font size, alignment, and color. If we select a different tool, you can see that the options change. On the right side of the document window, you'll find a few more panels. The most important one is the Layers panel. Here you can see the different layers in your document and turn them on or off. Right now, we only have one layer, the one that's called Background by default, but you could end up with quite a few depending on the project you're working on. You'll get more experience with layers once you start working with images. Finally, there's the menu bar at the top of the screen. Remember, we already used this to open our image file. The menu bar is kind of a catch-all in Photoshop. It gives you access to common file tasks like save, undo, and copy and paste, but it also has commands for editing that aren't on the regular Tools panel. Under Image, for example, you can adjust things like contrast, color, and size. If you go to the Filter menu, you can access advanced tools and effects like Blur and Sharpen. Now that you know your way around, I'd like to show you a few more tips. These might not seem important right now, but they'll come in handy throughout your time with Photoshop. Let's start with ways to customize your workspace by showing, hiding, and moving panels. To show or hide any panel, just go to the Window menu. Then you can click the panel you want. Panels that are currently visible will have a check mark next to them. I think I'm going to turn on the History panel. To move a panel, click, hold, and drag wherever you want it to go. As you can see, you can move panels anywhere in the Photoshop window. If you're just starting out though, we recommend keeping most of the panels in their default position for now. If you ever need to reset your panels, go back to the Window menu, mouse over Workspace, then choose the option that says Reset Essentials. Note that this process may be different depending on the version of Photoshop you're using. For instance, in Photoshop Elements, you'll just go to Window, then Reset Panels. Finally, there's one change we recommend making behind the scenes. It has to do with the type of unit Photoshop uses to measure an image's dimensions. To access the setting on a Mac, go to Photoshop on the menu bar, mouse over Preferences, and then choose Units and Rulers. Now, if you're using Windows, this is going to be found in the Edit menu instead. By default, Photoshop measures dimensions in inches, which is great if you're editing images for print. However, if you're editing for the web, we suggest that you change this to pixels. Then click OK when you're done. And that should do it. Now that you have everything set up and you know how to get around the program, you can start using Photoshop to edit your first image.
All right. That was a great introduction, kind of letting you know all the different types of things that are available whenever you open this. There's a few more videos I will show you, and again guys, if you want to go through here and go to this page, there's step-by-steps besides just the video. It'll show you step-by-step what to click on, what to do, and how things will look on your screen, okay? Just keep that in mind, that this is a great website to use, and we can do so much with this. And we're going to keep going, and we're going to utilize our videos. And the next thing will be saving images, as you guys can see here. Here's our next video. This will show us how to save our images once we're done in Photoshop. So let's watch this one. About 4 minutes.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
In Photoshop, saving works a bit differently from other programs. Instead of working with one main file type, like a document in Word, you'll find several options to choose from, including JPEG, PSD, and more. If any of these formats sound unfamiliar, that's okay. I'm going to tell you more about them over the course of this video. Ultimately, the option you choose just depends on the project. Take this image, for example. Here I have a simple photo that I took myself. All I did was crop and rotate it. Now I'd like to send a copy to my friends. A common file type like JPEG or PNG would be a great choice for this. Probably JPEG because that's better for high-quality photos. These file types can be viewed and edited on almost any computer or device, so that makes them perfect for sharing with others. What if you had a photo that you put a little more work into? For example, something with text or adjustment layers. If you only saved it as a regular image, you wouldn't be able to come back and re-edit those things later. Luckily, Photoshop has a special format called PSD that'll preserve your layers and other important info. PSD files can only be opened in Photoshop, so if you plan to share the image, you'll just need to save a copy in one of the common formats too. No matter what format you plan to use, you'll find everything you need under File on the menu bar. If you're saving an image for the first time or saving a new version, you'll generally use Save As. This will give you access to all the common file types, including PSD. This part of the process is pretty simple. Just type a name for your file, then choose where you want it to be saved. If the original file is in the same folder and you don't want it to be overwritten, just make sure to use a different file name. When you're done, go ahead and click the menu here, and you can select the format you want. As you can see, there are lots of options to choose from beyond what we've already talked about, including bitmap, GIF, and much more. In this case, we're going to choose Photoshop, also known as PSD, so we can keep editing the image later if we need to. With this option, make sure Layers is checked, then click the Save button, and that's all it takes. Now you can save your progress anytime by going back to File, then clicking Save. Let's take a look at Save for Web next. This is a really good option if you're planning to post the final image online, for instance on your blog, portfolio, or any other website. All you have to do is click, and you'll be taken to a special dialog box. As you can see, this works a little differently from Save As. You'll still find formats like JPEG and PNG to choose from, but this time you can optimize them for the web. You'll also find other settings that'll help you prep the image for posting. If you go with JPEG, for instance, you can customize the quality level. You may want to experiment with this while you watch the preview on the left. The goal is to find the right balance between quality and a smaller file size. That's what really makes an image suitable for the web. The number below the preview will tell you exactly what the file size is. Now look closely at the tabs at the top of the window. See them up here on the left? If you click the one that says 2 up, you can actually compare your changes to the original image. This is an easy way to make sure you haven't lost too much quality with the options you've chosen. In this example, the images look pretty similar, but the file size on the new version is quite a bit smaller. You can also change the dimensions of your image right here in the dialog box. This can be a good way to reduce the image if you're still struggling with file size. Just enter the width or height that you want, then press Enter on your keyboard, and you can see the effect immediately. When you're ready, go ahead and click Save. Then follow the usual steps of naming the file and choosing a location. Now click Save one more time, and that's it. Ultimately, the saving option you choose will vary from project to project. Sometimes you'll save a copy in more than one format, like we just did here. The best way to go about it is to think ahead and try to imagine what you'll need from the image, both now and in the future. Soon the whole process of saving will start to feel like second nature.
Wow, so many things that we need to learn before we use a professional type program, right? But it gives us, once we do figure out how to use it, it's so much easier to use than some of the others. Again, you can always go back and check out all of this information on the pages, okay? There's plenty of it on here. Again, if the video goes too fast for you, you can always go back and check these out and play around with them and all kinds of things. Earlier you heard them talk about layers. To me, this is, in my opinion, when I was trying to learn how to use this, was one of the hardest things for me to learn to use. So this next video will help you understand layers just a little bit better and how to utilize those whenever you're doing some photo editing here on Photoshop.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Layers are one of the most important features in Photoshop, so it's important that you understand how they work. Basically, layers let you combine different things in your image, whether it's text, shapes, or other objects that overlap. They can also be used to adjust the image in ways that you may not have realized. Why don't we take a closer look? This image actually has 4 layers. It might help to think of them as transparent panes of glass. When they're stacked on top of each other, they appear to be flat. But if you pull them apart, you can see that they're all working together to create the final image. There are many types of layers in Photoshop, but they fall into 2 main categories: content layers and adjustment layers. Content layers are pretty self-explanatory. They contain some type of object, like text, a graphic or a shape, or even your main image. Adjustment layers are a little different. Instead of containing an object, they have an effect on the layers below. In this example, we have a levels adjustment layer, which is making the cake image just a tiny bit brighter. Adjustment layers are a type of non-destructive editing, meaning they don't actually change anything about the original image, they just sit on top. So you may be wondering, why even use layers? Wouldn't it be easier to just work with everything in your image at once? The truth is, layers are useful because you can work with them independently. That gives you a lot more flexibility and control. Once you get more comfortable with them, you'll use them in your projects all the time. To get started, make sure the Layers panel is visible. It's usually found in the bottom right corner. If you don't have it, you can go to the Window menu to turn it on. If you've never used layers before, we recommend trying an adjustment layer first. Remember, these don't contain any kind of object, they just let you adjust some aspect of your image. That makes them really easy to add and play around with. First, select the layer below where you want the adjustment to appear. In this example, we'll select the cake layer. Next, click the Adjustment button at the bottom of the panel. It's the one that looks like a half-filled circle. Here, you'll find lots of options to choose from depending on what you need. For instance, you could add an effect like posterize, or change the image's color balance. In this case, we're going to choose Hue Saturation to see if we can make the colors a little more vibrant. Once you make your selection, a layer will be added to your document, and the Properties panel will appear. Here you can make your adjustment and see the effect it has on the image in real time. See how it works? The Properties panel might seem confusing at first, but don't worry. You'll learn more about it as you get more experience with Photoshop. For now, it's okay to experiment. When you're done, you can leave this panel open, but in my case, I'm going to close it so we can see the entire image again. There are some other features you should know about that'll make working with layers a whole lot easier. For instance, using the buttons at the bottom of the panel, you can delete your current layer or create a new one from scratch. There's also a way to duplicate layers, which is similar to using copy and paste. To do this, you can right-click the layer you want, then choose Duplicate from the menu, or you can simply drag and drop the layer to the New Layer button here. This will create a copy automatically. I don't really need this though, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Now, one of the best things about layers is how flexible they can be. You can hide them or change the order that they're in, all without making any permanent changes to the image. Hiding a layer can be useful if you want to get it out of the way, for example, so you can edit some other part of the image. All you have to do is click the eye icon next to the layer you want. As you can see, this works for adjustment layers too. Now we're looking at the original photo without any alterations. To turn the layers back on, just click the icons again. The order of your layers also plays an important role in the final image. As you might have gathered, layers at the top of the list always appear in front of layers at the bottom. To change the order of a layer, select the one you want, then drag and drop it into place. Just be mindful of any content that overlaps with the layers below. You might end up covering parts of your image by mistake. Let's go back to the original order, with the cake layer in the background and the levels layer down here. The last thing I'd like to show you is how to edit the contents of your layers. You can do this using the options in the Tools panel and also the Filter menu. Every layer is different, so not all tools and filters will work for the layer you have in mind. Still, there are some basic tasks that you can learn that'll definitely come in handy. To get started, select the layer you want to work with. Otherwise, you might end up editing the wrong layer by mistake. Next, click the tool you want to use. We'll choose the Move tool. Now watch what happens when I click and drag on the document. It moves the text layer only, because that's the one we have selected. We can do the same with the rings layer. There we go, that looks good. What if you have an adjustment layer and you want to revisit the adjustments you've already made? All you have to do is select the layer and the Properties panel should appear. Now, in my case, I actually closed the panel earlier, so I'll need to double-click the layer icon to reopen it. Now we can make whatever changes we want. I'm just going to adjust the hue again and try reducing the saturation instead. The process for editing text is just as easy. All you have to do is double-click the layer icon. This lets you edit the text directly in the document area. When you're done, press Escape on your keyboard, and that's it. There are lots of different ways to use layers in Photoshop, which is something you'll get a better feel for over time. For now, you know everything you need to get started, including what layers are for and how to work with them in your documents.
All right, folks, layers, absolutely. A little bit more complicated, but once we learn how to use them, we will be able to make that perfect flyer, that perfect banner, that perfect publication that we need to send out to our folks to let them know what we have going on. And we won't have to pay these ridiculous graphic design fees, right, that we all incur sometimes. So moving on from this, again, go back to the site, go through these step by step and play around with it until you get the feel of it. But I believe that you'll be able to do a whole lot with this. Our next video we're going to talk about is levels, curves, and color, how to really get that perfect color that you're looking for in your picture, how to not only just use the layers like we just did, but the real understanding of what goes into that. Okay, let's start the video.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Most photos aren't perfect. As you gain more experience with Photoshop, you'll probably start to notice some common problems that you wish you could fix. Luckily, there are ways to do this, even if you're not a seasoned pro. In this video, we're going to cover everything you need to get started, including how to adjust your levels, curves, saturation, and more. Levels let you adjust the shadows, highlights, and midtones in your image, which are things that every image has. Shadows are the darkest parts, highlights are the brightest, and the midtones are everything in between. There are many reasons why you might use a levels adjustment. For example, here we have a photo that's underexposed, which means not enough light was captured when the photo was taken. If we adjust the levels, we can make the midtones and highlights brighter so the details are easier to see. Let me show you how it works. First, go ahead and create an adjustment layer. Make sure to choose the Levels option from the menu. When the Properties panel appears, you should see a graph in the center. This is called the histogram. The histogram shows you data about the shadows, midtones, and highlights in your image. You can make adjustments using the sliders below. Now, this might seem a little strange at first, but don't worry. With some hands-on experience, you'll start to get the hang of it. In our example, we're going to move the highlight slider so it's where the histogram actually ends, and then move the midtone slider a little to the left, which will make the image a bit lighter overall. Every image is unique, so when you start doing this on your own, you will see some big differences between histograms. Basically, the key is to target the endpoints with the shadow and highlight sliders. Then you can adjust the midtones depending on what you need, for example, lighter or darker. Just be careful not to move the sliders too far past the endpoints. This can cause you to lose detail in your image, also known as clipping. As always, if you do end up making a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You can just move the slider back or press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z to undo. When you're done, here's a tip that'll let you compare the adjustments to the original image. Just turn the layer on or off using the icon here. See how the original is so much darker overall? In the new version, the sky and the clouds look much brighter, so the subject is easier to see. Similar to levels is a feature called curves. The difference is that curves let you adjust shadows, highlights, and midtones separately. The tool is a bit harder to use, but for experienced users, it does offer a lot more control. Let's take a look at how it works. Just like before, you'll start by adding an adjustment layer. This time, choose Curves. When the panel appears, you should see a diagonal line that has two beginning and end points. This is where you'll make your adjustments. Of course, it looks very different from the Levels interface, but it has the same arrangement of shadows on the left and highlights on the right. To add a point, just click anywhere on the line, then drag up, down, left, or right to see the effect it has. One of the simplest things you can do with curves is to increase the contrast. To do this, you'll need to drag the curve down towards the left, then click to add a second point and drag it up near the right. See how we've created a gentle curve that follows the upward slope of the line? By dragging it down near the shadows and up near the highlights, we've intensified those parts of the image. If we wanted to decrease the contrast, we could just do the opposite. Drag it down here instead, and then up over here. Just be careful to avoid big steep curves that don't follow the slope of the line. As with levels, you can end up losing a lot of detail in your image. While you're still getting the hang of curves, you might want to check out the Presets menu too. Here you'll find lots of built-in options that you can then customize as needed. These can also help you get a better understanding of how the Curves interface works. If you ever need to start over, just go back to the menu and choose Default. There are many times when you might want to adjust the colors in your image. With saturation, you can increase or decrease the color intensity, either as a correction or just for artistic effect. Luckily, this is one of the easiest adjustments you can make in Photoshop. all you have to do is add an adjustment layer for hue saturation. Then you can make your changes using the slider here. If the colors in your image are dull or muted, increasing the saturation will make them look more vivid. If you drag the slider in the opposite direction, you can see that it reduces the intensity instead. You can even create a black and white or grayscale image by dragging it all the way to the left. As with levels and curves, you'll want to avoid making extreme adjustments. For example, watch what happens when I drag the slider all the way to the right. Now we've lost a lot of detail in the image, and the colors look pretty unnatural. I'm just going to drag this a little bit back towards the left, and I think that should do it. Of course, this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to making color adjustments. If you go back to the Adjustments menu, you'll find lots of other options to choose from. Vibrance, for example, will up the saturation for parts of your image without oversaturating the parts that are already colorful. Black and white, on the other hand, will give you more control over desaturation. Make sure to check these out when you have some time on your own. Finally, some corrections are harder to pull off than others. Luckily, Photoshop comes with several auto adjustment tools that can help you make specialized corrections in no time. Take this image, for example. See how the snow sort of has a bluish tint to it? To fix this, all we have to do is go to the Image menu, then choose the option that says Auto Color. Now the snow looks white. If you go back to the Image menu, you'll see there are two more auto adjustments to choose from: Auto Tone and Auto Contrast. Another place that you'll sometimes find an auto option is within certain adjustment layers. In general, these can be a great way to improve your image quickly, without much time and effort. You can also just plan to use them as a starting point and tweak the adjustments afterwards to customize them. Whether your image is too light or too dark, too dull or too saturated, you can fix all kinds of common problems in Photoshop. Now you know some tools that can help you improve your images dramatically, including levels, curves, saturation, and more.
We talked about a lot of this earlier in the image editing 101 class. As you can see, a lot of the same things go along with our Photoshop, but that video really showed us where the buttons and everything are and how we can make this effective on there. Again, just repeating, go to the website, check out the simple instructions here, and if you're having trouble, it'll help walk you through those things. Okay, now we're going to move on. We're going to move on as soon as I get to the bottom here. Sharpening and noise reduction. And here's a video on how to do that with our Photoshop Basics.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
By now, you probably know how to adjust simple properties in your images, like shadows, highlights, and color. But what if you had something with a less obvious issue? For example, a photo that looked soft, or maybe even a little grainy. Fortunately, Photoshop comes with a number of filters that can help you with something like this. Today I'm going to show you two of them: Sharpening, and also a feature called Noise Reduction. Sharpening does exactly what you would think. It can make your images sharper or clearer so certain details are easier to see. It can't fix photos that are blurry or out of focus, unfortunately, but if you have an image that's a bit soft, like this one, it can help. Anytime you're working with filters, it's a good idea to duplicate your layer first so you aren't making changes to the original. Just right-click, choose Duplicate Layer from the menu, and then give it a name. We'll type Sharpen to make it easy to tell the layers apart. When you're done, go up to Filter on the menu bar, then mouse over the option that says Sharpen. Here you'll find a few different filters to choose from. They'll all sharpen your image, but in different ways and to different degrees. We're going to use the one called Unsharp Mask, which may sound a bit weird, but it's exactly what we need. It's very easy to use, and it'll let us customize the results. As you can see, this filter gives you 3 different settings to work with: amount, radius, and threshold. You'll see a preview in the document window as long as this box stays checked. You also have a smaller preview that you can easily reposition. Notice that when you hold this with your mouse, it toggles the preview on and off, which makes it easy to compare the sharpened version to the original. Now, anytime you use sharpening, it's important not to make any extreme adjustments. You can end up doing more harm than good. That being said, it's still okay to experiment, and nothing in Photoshop is permanent. Why don't we get started with the radius setting? Radius controls the size of the details that are being sharpened, so generally it's best to set it to a lower value. Too high, and the edges will start to look unnatural or exaggerated. This is called a halo effect. We recommend something between 0.3 and 0.5 for most images. You can even enter the exact value here. You could go a bit higher if you were working with a higher resolution photo. The amount setting controls the level of sharpness being added. How much you need depends on several different things, including the image size, so it's good to play around with this. This time, if you go too low, the effect on the image may not be strong enough. See how it still looks kind of soft? In this case, I think I'm going to set the amount fairly high, somewhere between 180 and 190. Finally, sharpening has a tendency to make image noise more visible. Those are the tiny little flecks that can make your photo look grainy. You might even see some in the background here. Increasing the threshold can help you reduce this, but you have to be careful. It can cause your sharpening to become inconsistent. Therefore, we recommend leaving this set to 0, unless the filter is creating lots of extra noise for you. So there we have it. I think we're done. The difference is subtle, but it does make the image look a bit more crisp. Once again, you can click and hold the preview to toggle it on or off. When you're satisfied, go ahead and click OK. Noise isn't just caused by sharpening. It can also appear in your image for other reasons. For example, if the photo was taken in lower light. Luckily, you can reduce this using a noise reduction filter. Once again, you'll start by duplicating your layer, so you aren't making changes to the original. You can right-click like before, or just drag the layer down to the New Layer button. Next, go ahead to the Filter menu, then mouse over the Noise option. You'll want to choose the one that says Reduce Noise, and a dialog box will appear. When you apply noise reduction, you're actually removing information from the image, so you have to be careful when using this feature. Removing too much noise can lead to blurriness or loss of detail. The key is to take it one setting at a time and just keep adjusting them until you're happy with the results. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we have Strength, which basically controls how much noise reduction is being applied. We recommend starting at the maximum value so you can see your adjustments more easily, but you can always set it to something else later if you need to. Next, we have Preserve Details, which controls how much of the original image is left untouched. You might want to play with this one a bit while you keep an eye on the preview. Choose a setting that's too high, and you'll actually cancel the effects of the filter. But if you go too low, you'll start to lose detail. We're going to shoot for something less extreme, maybe around 5 or 10%. This keeps some of the detail, but also gets rid of a lot of the noise. Sometimes, noise will look like small patches of individual colors. The word for this is color noise. You can mitigate the effect by increasing the Reduce Color Noise setting. Just be careful not to increase it too much, or depending on the image, the colors might start to bleed together. For most images, we recommend a lower setting. I think 40 or 50% should do it for this one. Finally, reducing noise can also cause the image to lose some sharpness. You can add that sharpness back using the Sharpen Details setting. Just like Preserve Details, increasing this too much can cancel the effects of the filter, so you generally want to aim lower. In this example, we're going to set it to about 10%, which should sharpen it just enough to make a difference. Keep in mind, you can use the same click and hold method to compare the filtered version to the original. If you look closely, you'll see that the difference is pretty slight, but we did manage to reduce some of the noise. As you can see, there are lots of minor problems that you may not have realized you can fix in Photoshop. Now you know how to sharpen your images and reduce image noise using 2 easy-to-use filters.
even more great information, guys. Really, sharpening and noise reduction can make the difference between a good image and a bad image, and we can actually hurt ourselves by doing too much with a photograph, as you can see here in the sharpening. We can actually take a photograph that can be enhanced to make it look great, and really kind of make it look artificial if we're not lucky. If we're not careful with that. Knowing this information is really helpful for us. The next thing was doing more with layers, but we don't really want to cover that. We're just trying to cover the basics here, and that's really what we're wanting to do. There's other tools that are available here on working with brushes where we can kind of draw our own images and all those things. I encourage you to take a look at those. They're not something that the beginner really needs to be worried about. And then again, the next thing would be how to work with the text in your if you're creating flyers, or if you're creating some sort of ad or adding information, creating memes for your social media accounts. Photoshop is great for that. And if you are doing memes and those sort of things, I do want to suggest that you try a application on your phones called WordSwag. There's images and things that you can do on there where you can simply add text, and everybody can become a great web designer almost on your phone by using your social media accounts. This is all we have for today. I hope you were able to enjoy this. As you can see, there's more resources here. There's so much more that you can do. You can go in, again, try again to figure out if this is going to work for you. This is just one of the more professional ones that does cost. So I encourage you to play around with it, try some free versions out, and see what works for you. I want to thank you all for listening today. I hope this has been helpful. And of course, you can always reach any of the technical assistant specialist staff here at CCO. My name is Chris Welch. We also have Patty Mitchell and Brad Wagnon. So our main number here is 918-207-4918. That will take you to Mary Stevenson, and she can get the numbers out to any of you guys. And if you want to reach me directly, my email was Chris, CHRIS -Welch, WELCH, @Cherokee.org. My office line is 918-207-4953, or you can reach me by cell phone. Text messages and those sort of things are great as well at 918-316-4834. Again, thanks for joining us. I hope this was helpful for all of you. Have a great week. We're done.